Hey there, my name's Celerity. I'm a variety streamer on Twitch, mostly streaming roguelikes, deck builders, strategy games, auto battlers, anything in that vicinity. I have 1,500 hours in backpack battles. I've reached master on all classes 4 separate times. We just did a speedrun to master on all classes, which was pretty fun. So I hopefully know enough to teach you a thing or two. If you're already master or grandmaster, then maybe not, but I'll still try. It's good to get a new perspective from time to time. On that note, please do join us on Twitch, link in the description. If this is right after release, we're probably playing Backpack right now, or at least a cool indie game that you would probably also enjoy. I'm a lot more active there than I am on YouTube. Also, a quick reminder that we have timestamps for you to jump to any section you want if the next section is too basic for you. But I first want to answer the question, what is Backpack Battles? Maybe you stumbled in here from a recommendation. Maybe you're curious if the game is worth picking up. Spoilers, it is. I think it's the best auto battler on the market, and I've played almost all of them. So let's give a brief summary of what Backpack is all about. First of all, Backpack Battles is an auto battler, the same genre as games like Hearthstone Battlegrounds and Teamfight Tactics, which you've probably heard of. And if not, it's basically a genre where you assemble your board, your army, in this case your backpack, and then you send it at your opponent. No control over what's happening, right? That's why it's called an auto battler. It's all about strategy, it's all about assembling the pieces and then watching them go. But unlike those games, unlike Battlegrounds and TFT, the matchmaking is asynchronous. That means you're not playing against live players. Every round you'll get matched up against the board of someone near your rank who has played recently. As a result, there's no timer. You can spend half an hour setting up your backpack if you want. Not that I would know anything about that. You can even close the game mid-run and continue it a week, 2 weeks later. It's all at your own pace. The goal of the game is to reach 10 wins before receiving 5 losses. If you hit 10 wins, the game will also give you the option to push your luck in survival, basically overtime mode, where you play until round 18 and gain or lose points based on your performance. Or, if your build isn't that great, you can just take the points and dip. The gameplay is real-time. You'll have a board, a backpack, of course, full of items that activate based on their cooldown. Items will often have adjacency bonuses indicated by the stars, and these can do all sorts of things like make the item faster, make other items faster, grant damage to adjacent weapons, inflict debuffs on opponents, heal you, etc., right? You get the idea, anything. The stars are really important. This will force you to configure your backpack in increasingly complex ways over the course of a run. The backpack will evolve and, the stars will branch out and you'll have to fit everything together. This is where a lot of the fun of the game comes in. If you're someone who loves optimizing your board, trying to get everything to fit together in the perfect way, then Backpack Battles will scratch that itch. And there's no timer to pressure you while you do it. Among items, the core of your build will usually be your weapon. Weapons require stamina, shown in the item description. A good way to think about stamina is that you get a natural 1 stamina per second. So if you're running a weapon or weapons that use more than that, you should invest in some plus stamina items to help out. Stamina is a balancing mechanic, since weapons tend to be higher output than other items. So if they didn't take stamina, you'd simply fill your board with weapons and call it a day. The shop is, well, a shop. You can buy items here or reroll them for 1 gold, but the cost goes up if you reroll a lot. You'll gain increasing amounts of gold every round, and the rarity of items in the shop will also increase, shown by hovering the shop sign in-game. You'll also gain a little bit of max health each round. And on rounds 4 and 8, you'll get access to a random skill to specialize your build. And then on round 8, you'll also get to pick your subclass to specialize it further. The subclass is essentially the main focus of your build, and the skills are additional ways to focus the build. But the subclass is the most important. I'll go into more detail on the shop and nuances of all these mechanics later in the guide, but those are the basics. So, is Backpack Battles right for you? I think it's honestly one of the deepest auto battlers out there. The sheer build variety of having 6 classes, each with 5 unique subclasses, and random skills and badges that can give you other classes' items, you can dual class, means the build variety eclipses anything else out there by far. The devs are always adding new stuff and doing balance patches to shake up the meta, and the skill ceiling is astronomical. I still feel like I learn something new every day I play this game, and there's still a lot of room for me to improve. So definitely dive in if you want something that's going to scratch the optimization organizational itch. As long as you don't mind organizing, reorganizing your board from time to time, you should definitely give it a try. Alright, so you click this video wondering, what are the best builds? What are the quick and dirty secrets I can use to climb? And I'll be honest with you, making a guide for this game has been extremely difficult. Backpack Battles has a lot of intangibles at high-level play that are hard to explain, and especially in the proper order for a new viewer. In addition, it has a constantly shifting metagame where if you're watching a build guide, that build might be obsolete in a month or a week. And I did start out doing simple build guides and subclass breakdowns for each of the classes, but that might have made the video run over 2 hours. So I kind of scrapped that. Probably not the best idea. We'll have to keep the build guides as separate videos, unfortunately. I will be posting certain examples and some little class breakdowns, little examples of the tips later on. So if that's what you're interested in, it will appear, but it might not be as detailed as you'd hope for. But let me know if you're interested in more detailed build guides, and maybe we'll get some out. But the way I am going to approach this is I want to teach you how to learn. I want to teach you how to think about the game and how to build your skill set so that you can improve on your own. I think this is always the best way to learn a new game and to approach the active learning. After I give some generalized tips, we'll dig into the individual classes a bit, where again I'll give you some build examples and example of how the tips can be applied. And then finally, we'll round it out with the most advanced tips at the end after you understand everything. So hopefully the structure is easy to follow, but I'm not necessarily good at condensing the information. As I mentioned, it has been a bit of a struggle to format the video. So please give me your feedback in the comments on what worked for you or what didn't. It'll help me for next time. Okay, tip number 1. Stick with a main character. This is the first question that I get asked when people start playing the game. Is it better to learn one character or switch around a lot? While I definitely think you should try all the classes at first, you should settle in on one that you like best and play it at least to diamond. This is the same in fighting games or in chess. You'll get the most benefit by getting comfortable with a single character or opening, and you'll get a vibe for how it feels to just play the game at a higher level. Then you can take the knowledge from that one class and apply it to a whole new class. It'll feel like you're speedrunning the game because you already know so much about how to get better with a class. Tip number 2, always have a plan in mind. First, your plan A. Find a good build that you can easily assemble from items that aren't too rare. Figure out how to get there consistently and go for it every run. This is your comfort zone, your default build, something that you are honed in on from the start. You assume you're going to do this every game. Every time you pivot from this build, try to envision what you want your board to look like by the end of the game. Okay, always have a plan in your head for how the board is going to evolve. You think of it like a shopping list. You have your ideal board in your head, and you're just collecting pieces of it, right, over time. Sometimes maybe there's a tasty snack on sale and you splurge a little bit, that's fine, but your overall direction will stay true. Even if you pivot from your default build, right, you're still going to have a direction in mind of why you're doing this, what it's going to look like at the end, and what the pieces are that you need to assemble it. We'll elaborate later to give some examples on this and some examples of default builds to help you get started. Tip number 3, look for signposts. These are powerful, usually rare items that change the direction of your build completely. Maybe your default Reaper build is a staff cauldron build, so you buy a broom to make the staff. But on round 3, you see a Hungry Blade. That's very early, and Hungry Blade's an item that you can definitely build around early. More than that, it's also an item that's fueled by other common items, herbs, that can still be found in the shop since you're in the early game. That is a signpost. That is a complete build around. It's strong when you get it, it's strong later on. And recognizing signposts and knowing when to pivot and when to commit is one of the absolute highest level skills you can master in the game. Speaking personally, it's probably the main thing that separates masters from grandmasters. And don't worry if you make mistakes at the start, right? Everybody makes mistakes when it comes to pivoting and looking for signposts and committing. That's just the hardest part of the game. But, you know, just something to keep in mind. That signpost, this will be something that I'll talk about later, and I'll give some examples of signposts later in the video for different classes. Tip number 4. Pay attention to shop rarity. You can find the chance to roll a certain rarity of item by hovering over the shop sign. When you know what item you're looking for, you want to roll really hard in the rounds where it's available. For commons, you want to roll hard right away. For rare items, that usually means rounds 4 to 7. For epic items, maybe more like rounds 6 and up, and legendaries are easiest after round 7. So don't waste money rolling when you can't even find what you're looking for. Tip number 5, buy items on sale. Sale items are essentially free. You can always sell it back for the price you paid for it. There's no reason not to pick up a sale item before re-rolling, or even for a round or two if it helps you in the short term. Tip number 6, watch your battles. This is the only way you can get feedback on what your build is doing well or poorly. Especially at the start, you should pay attention to how your items are working together, whether you're scaling too slowly, need a little more defense, or a little more stamina, or you want to move things around because your build isn't functioning optimally. You know, this is how you get that feedback. You can use the in-game log. It's really detailed. It shows every item's individual output, how many times you honked, ran out of stamina, and more. Damage per second and heal or block per second are very good stats to keep track of. That's essentially a raw measurement of your build's power level. The more you understand your build, the more you will understand future builds by comparison. Tip number 7, look at your opponent's boards too. Especially if you lose, copy their board in your mind, and maybe that can be a build for you to try in the future. Especially for your main class, if it looks like something you can replicate without a bunch of trouble, make a mental note of it. You want to become a walking database of effective builds so that you can look at any item in the shop and say, if I want that, if I did buy that, I know how to build around it. You know, I know what the right builds are for that item. I know what items support it. I know what the endgame board looks like. I know everything about it, right? You want to become that database, and that's how you make good decisions for, you know, tips number 2 and 3 for looking for signposts. That's how you assemble that knowledge. When your opponents are using builds that are very effective, you can then turn that into a signpost for yourself and say, okay, well, now I know that works. You know, I want to try it out too. Tip number 8, don't go for econ items while you're learning the game. This one might raise some eyebrows, so I don't want to be misunderstood. Econ is fine. There's no reason you should avoid pigs and gem boxes like the plague. But in lower ranks, players tend to have pretty weak boards, and you can get away with a lot of crazy econ plays that you simply can't later on. It could be fun to buy every pig you see, have an extra 40 gold by endgame, but that's not really helping you build good habits, right? It's just taking advantage of newer players. In addition, it's not getting you used to the default income that you would normally have. So in higher ranks, when you can't get away with that stuff, you're going to be saying, where'd all my money go? I'm used to having more stuff. I'm used to having this thing, this item in this build. So it's really easier if you kind of stick with a standardized income at the beginning, and you can get used to what the default income is, and you'll be more comfortable as you climb up that way. So definitely restrict yourself at least to 1 pig, 1 gem box per game, let's say. Just don't go crazy with it. Tip number 9. Tempo, tempo, tempo. Not exactly a tip. This is more like an explanation, because tempo is an idea that comes up often in games like these. Tempo in music means speed or pace. And in the context of auto battlers, you can measure every decision you make by how much pace or tempo it gives you. Buying a powerful item ahead of schedule is a high tempo play. You get a legendary weapon really fast, that is high tempo. You're going to be really strong in the short term, right? On the other hand, buying econ or spending a turn to combine items for recipe might be a really low tempo play, but then it gives you a ton of tempo after the recipe is finished because you created a powerful item, right? So that's like the flow of tempo, going really fast and then maybe going really slow and then fast and slow. The main reason that you'd want to keep this concept in mind is if you get down to like 1 or 2 lives, you don't really want to be buying a bunch of greed items, right? Because you need to survive in the short term. So this is something that I think most of us understand intuitively, but it's a word that that often causes confusion. So I just wanted to define it here. Just a concept to keep in mind. All right, so let's start talking about the classes. First of all, the site I'm using here is BPB Builds. It's a great resource if you want to be able to sandbox some builds and put them on the board, or if you just want to see builds from other players that they have made. It could be could give you inspiration for some of your endgame builds. Definitely check it out. I'll put a link in the video description if you want to do so. So let's start with Ranger. Ranger is the aggro class. She's all about critting, hitting hard, hitting fast. If you play aggro in any other game, this might be the one that speaks to you. Also, I think she is the simplest class to play. She has kind of the most builds that are replicatable, forcible, simple to understand. You know, every class does have depth. I'm not going to say she's like brainless, you know, but she is the easiest to grasp if you're a new player, so that's something to keep in mind. Her main mechanic is that she can turn luck into crit rate. Every class can get luck, every class, for the most part, can crit in some way, but Ranger is the one that is the best at creating crit rate by just getting a bunch of these clovers, which is her exclusive item, and then another exclusive item, the acorn collar, which turns that luck into crit rate. So that's really powerful. This is, I would say, her most important item, and it's going to be a build around for a lot of the builds that we want to play her with. Also, she has the Lucky Piggy. If you turn 2 clovers and a pig into the Lucky Piggy, it's great. It saves space, and it also gives extra chance for certain items like shields and arrows and whatever. There's a bunch of things that it will increase the chance of. In addition, she's got the Ranger Bag, which will turn luck into crit rate, just like the acorn collar does. And then her second bag, the Vineweed Basket, is a healing bag. I'm not going to discuss that one here because I recommend, if you're just starting out, I recommend trying the Ranger Bag. So I'm going to be giving a couple of build ideas for the Ranger Bag. Quick and dirty Ranger build, baby mode 101. We're not going to go too in depth because, again, the first time I recorded this, it went like half an hour. So I'm just going to try to condense here and keep it slim, okay? You're going to go Hero Sword, and, you know, if you can, get a bag of stones. That's extra damage on the sword. But mainly, go Hero Sword, get a broom, and then get a whetstone. And by having a broom and a loose whetstone here, what we're going to do is we're leaving ourselves outs, in poker terms, leaving ourselves more chances of getting the weapon, the endgame weapon that we are seeking, okay? The 2 weapons that we can get from Broom and Whetstone are Magic Staff, which requires the Broom and a Mana Orb. If you find a Mana Orb, you're going to turn this into a staff, and that's your main weapon. But on the other hand, if you find a Ripsaw Blade plus Whetstone makes a Katana, and a Katana is also a good endgame weapon for this build. Thirdly, you can find the Fancy Fencing Rapier, and that could be your endgame weapon for this build. So those 3 mainly are what I'm going to recommend. And then your endgame board will look something like this, just an outline. I'm not going to go into it too deeply, but you're going to go with the Piercing Arrow, which is the Hunter subclass. You're going to get one of those weapons. Conveniently, they are all 4 size, so they all fit in the same kind of spot. But you're going to get one of those weapons, you're going to put it on the arrow, and then you're going to put 2 other fast things on the arrow. Keep note of this kind of configuration, where you have 2 armor and 2 shields. This is very common across, honestly, all classes. It's very common to use shields and armor in this way because the shields will buff the block gain from the armors, and often you'll just see this on different people's boards in late game. It works here because it's a scaling damage build. You're going to scale the damage of... You're going to scale the crit rate, anyway, from the Piercing Arrow, and the Katana also scales damage, as does the Magic Staff, so... and the Rapier, they all scale damage. So you want a little bit of defense to let you scale, okay? And then there's some other defensive items just kind of thrown in here. It can be really anything. The reason I recommend this is because it works with just the weapon and the arrow. You almost don't need anything else, but you might as well build defense with the remaining slots. All right, so that is that. As far as signposts for Ranger, let's talk about some of the signposts. If you make the arrow build your kind of default comfort build, which I do recommend, then here are some of the things that maybe steer you away from going for that build and maybe make you pick a different subclass or a different theme. So first of all, let's say you find an early spear. Spear is a great early weapon, and you can turn that spear into the poison spear via the pestilence flask. So if you've already got a spear, you just happen to have it on the board, maybe instead of your hero sword, then you find the flask. Well, now you can be a poison build with the poison spear. So you would pick poison ivy. There's a couple other ways to get into ivy that I'll go into here. If you have an early stone skin potion and a bunch of stones. So this is one tip I have for Ranger. In general, is collect stones, because stones are really good damage in a bag of stones. They can do good damage on their own next to a sword or something. They're really just free damage, and you can sell them back for 1 gold anytime, right? So just collect stones, never skip a stone as Ranger, because you can either use them with a bag of stones, or you can convert them into these strong stone skin potions. And this is a very key item for poison ivy builds in a lot of cases, because if you get multiple strong stone skin potions plus some armor, you're immediately getting the benefit of poison ivy. When they reach 18 poison, they start taking more damage. You can get that start of battle, and you can get the 25% damage for the entire battle. So stacking potions, very, very strong strategy for poison ivy, as is just having a poison spear can be good enough for poison ivy. Some other skills that support this that you might find that might make you want to go for ivy could be heavy drinking. This is something that procs your potions every now and then, or Thorn Burst, which gives you extra spikes to proc the poison from poison ivy. These can all be really good in a poison ivy build, and they might lead you down that path. In addition, the Thorn Whip might lead you down that path. You can turn Thorn Whip into a Thorn Bloom, and that can just be your weapon for a poison ivy board. So all of those things could be things that make you go ivy. Let's talk about the other build that I have here, which is Critwood Golem. This one also requires a bunch of stones. So that's why I say, like, collect the stones. You never know what they're going to be useful for. The Stone Golem requires... Sorry, I didn't pull it up here, but it requires the heart container and 4 stones to make the Stone Golem. And for Ranger, the nice thing about Stone Golem is that it uses 7 regen to get it so fast. You pretty much need the regen to use Stone Golem. And Ranger has access to the Leaf subclass, the Lifebinder, I believe. Lifebinder subclass, which gives you the Leaf. And this will give you immediate regen to proc the Stone Golem immediately. So just like we wanted to proc this immediately, we also want to proc the Stone Golem immediately with the regen from Leaf. And the nice thing is Leaf also gives you this immediate mana. So if you have a Critwood Staff, which by the way is Staff, we already looked at it, but Staff plus Acorn Collar. If you have a Critwood Staff, you're immediately going to start critting, right? Because you have the mana start of combat, and you have the fast, powerful Golem start of combat. And that can be a very, very fast kind of kill build. I would say the signposts for this are, if you already have a staff and you happen to have a bunch of stones or a bunch of bags of stones, because the Golem gains damage with more bags of stones. So if you're finding, that you have multiple bags of stones, 2 bags of stones and 4 stones, and then you find either the heart container or you find the pieces of the Critwood Staff, then I would say any of those could make you want to go this direction. As well as the skill Stoned makes the build a lot stronger because you get a portion of your damage as block, and that can be pretty significant defense for the build. So those are the signposts I would say for Critwood Golem. So yeah, there's 2 different directions you can go from the build that I showed you here. You can go either this build, or you can turn it into an Ivy build or a Critwood Golem build. All right, let's talk about Reaper. Ooh, boy. Reaper is my favorite class, my main class. She is also, by far, I would say, the most complicated character in the game. But she is more control-oriented. She's definitely the most controlling character. She has a lot of debuffs, a lot of blind, poison, the ability to extend the fight to try to win in fatigue. Right? She is definitely the control character. Although she has a couple of builds which are a little more aggro. But an exhaustive guide for Reaper would probably take about 10 hours. So I'm going to try to just give a few ideas here. I'm going to give one primary idea, just like I did for Ranger. One primary idea of a go-to build that you can try out. Her bags are the Coffin, which inflicts some poison. I would recommend this for any new players. Even though it may not be the best in late game sometimes, it is definitely the easiest to win with in the early game. The Relic case is weapon-based builds. And technically the build I'm recommending here might be better with Relic case in the late game, but it's so much easier to win with Coffin early that I would still just recommend picking up Coffin and playing with that. So in the early game, double broom is usually going to be the way to go unless you find something better. Get yourself a buckler. Just play kind of defensive, a couple of herbs. Or if you find them, the deck of cards. And we're looking for regen, basically. We're looking for regen. The lovers you pretty much always get as soon as you get cards. And maybe some ace of spades if you get those. Eventually, what you're looking for is the Bloodthorn. And the Bloodthorn comes from Hungry Blade plus Thorn Whip. So either of these are what you're going to grab as soon as you see one. You will pretty much always find both of them over the course of a run. When you find them is kind of up in the air. But again, roll in rounds like 6 through 9-ish to try to hit them as fast as you can. The Hungry Blade you can pretty much play normally. The Whip is, because it doesn't work with the regen, the Whip is a little worse. So if you're stuck with Whip for a while without Hungry Blade, you might have to compensate with like Spike Shield or more Ace of Spades. But Hungry Blade is fine by itself. You can just work with a Hungry Blade for a while until it becomes the Bloodthorn. And the late game build might look something like this. I actually lifted this from another player who posted it here to the site. But I think it's pretty good. It illustrates some of the more important items in the build. So if you get the cards, again, the Lovers and Ace of Spades cards. Blood Harvester's unique. You probably won't find that, so I wouldn't pay too much attention to that, but it is ideal, of course, getting more vampirism. Get a bunch of Vampiric Gloves, Vampiric Armor. This is going to be your priority for your first Blood Amulet. Turn it into armor. That's the most important thing, but then the rest of them you can turn into gloves if you want. Of course, the subclass I didn't mention is Vampirus. This is a vampiric build. Everything's vampiric. You take everything that is red, essentially. Why isn't it showing here? The blood manipulation would be the best skill for this build, but it can work with almost any skill. And that's why I'm recommending it, because all you need is the Bloodthorn, and then get some vampiric stuff. Throw some support items around it. Could be some more armor. Could be this, the Heart of Darkness, which can steal enemies' buffs, including regen. Very good to steal buffs, because this scales with 3 of the buffs: regen, vampirism, and spikes. And that's pretty much it. As for whether you get a crook or some of this other stuff, you might not, but this is the core of the build. Very simple, very easy to replicate. I want to talk about a few other things. Again, there are many. Reaper is capable of doing crazy buff printing stuff. She's capable of doing poison builds, magic staff builds, potion builds. There's so many things that she can do. So I'm just going to try to narrow it down to a few. First of all, in the previous build, I did want to mention that Prismatic Orb is also really good. Although it's kind of low tempo buy on its own. You'll see the main thing you're looking at here is that the starred vampiric items give you extra vampirism. And because Prismatic Orb qualifies as all of the item types, it means that when you stack a bunch of these together, you end up... It kind of scales exponentially. So the first one's kind of bad, but the second one is really good. The third one is great. You know, they just get better in multiples, because instead of having... let's say 2 vampiric orbs that make 2 vampirism, now you have 3 that are making 3 vampirism, so it's just getting out of control. Would definitely recommend it. It can also create the bird. Sorry, I didn't have it on the screen, but combined with the Jinx tortilla. Combined with the Jinx tortilla, it makes the Bird of Paradise. Gives you extra buffs and healing, which is fantastic. Also, if you find yourself a wooden sword, you can make the prismatic sword and actually replace Bloodthorn if you have enough support for this. It can be better than Bloodthorn in the late game. So yeah, I definitely would recommend looking for prismatic orbs as well. But let's take a look at some other signposts that might sway you from the Bloodthorn build, the default build. So first of all, since you're starting with brooms, I recommend you start with brooms. You could find an early snowman. And if you do, the snowman creates 2 snow sticks, and that can be your entire build around. Reaper has a subclass, Mr. Struggles. This is a fatigue, you know, make the fight last as long as possible kind of subclass, and that works perfectly with the snow sticks. So you can grab 2 snow sticks, you can go this subclass and get corrupted armor. Sorry, the site doesn't always show the entire tooltip. But if you get the corrupted armor, you fling your cold at the enemy, and that just works really well for slowing the fight down, and yeah, you don't need anything else. That's basically the core of the build. Also, another skill that might entice you to go this direction is No Rush Please. This is the best skill you can get for this strategy for pretty obvious reasons. Extra cold, extra delay. So that's one direction. Another direction is for the snake subclass. This is Venomous? Actually, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the actual subclass is called. I'm sorry. But if you go for the snake, you may find an early Goobert or an early Toad. And snake really likes other pets. So these are kind of cheap pets that you could get early. And if you stack a bunch of them, then the snake gets really strong. Gives you a lot of extra max health, which is fantastic for tempo after round 8. Also, it gives you a lot of luck. And usually the weapon you'll go for with this build is the rapier again, because this uses luck to gain damage. So usually this would be the core of the rapier build. And again, I would say like early Goobert, if you get a couple of pets, then maybe you're looking at snake. Definitely if you find the rapier, you're going snake, you know. And also if you get the leaf badge. Leaf badge is the item that allows you to get ranger items in the shop. And you can get more clovers. This also generates its own luck. This is great for the luck build. So those are some signposts for the snake. As far as a poison build, if you find the scythe is kind of the most powerful poison signpost, because items inside of it inflict double poison. So if you find a scythe, you might also find Smelly Wall. This is another poison signpost. You put some garlic in front of it. Also, just any kind of armor, because this is inflicting poison on block gen. So if you have like vampiric armor that we looked at before, that will inflict poison over time and also give you some defense. If you do get Scythe, it really works with anything. You can put it with the snake, you can put it with some poison potions. Anything that poisons, essentially, poison Goobert. Anything that poisons, you might want to get a Scythe. One build could be multiple poison potions inside of 2 scythes. That's called like a poison bomb build, and that's pretty effective when built correctly. With that, you would actually go for the Cursed Dagger subclass. But yeah, I won't go too far into that one. We're veering off course here. The final signpost that I wanted to mention is if you get Hammer Dagger. Reaper has pretty effective hammer build. 2 skills that also might be signposts for that is Knife to Meet You, making your daggers attack faster, and Enchanted Weapons, giving extra chance to your hammer. If you pick one of these up early and you have a hammer, maybe you go for the hammer build. Hammer build also uses the Cursed Dagger. It wants mostly poison daggers, which comes from the poison potion. And it usually wants the Ruby Chonk, because Ruby Chonk has extra stun chance. Ruby Chonk comes from Ruby Whelp and Hollow Fire Lizard. So again, if you're already grabbing the cards for your Bloodthorn, and then you happen to find a hammer first and a dagger maybe, then maybe you pivot into this, and that could be a good idea. Alright, next we're going to talk about Berserker. This is probably going to be the shortest section. Berserker is all about battle rage. She'll have a period of time based on the bag where she either attacks faster or becomes essentially invincible. And, you know, this is her core mechanic. She wants to extend Battle Rage. She wants to be inside a Battle Rage where she gets a lot stronger. If you can wait out the Battle Rage, then she gets very weak. So it's, you know, it's a standard kind of Berserker playstyle. She has a lot of defense, especially during Battle Rage. And also can put out some really big numbers with some big weapons. So if you like swinging around a huge busted blade or great axe, then this is the class for you. She has a forging hammer. She has the ability to turn certain items into dragon scale versions of those items via the forging hammer or via the utility pouch, which is the bag I'm going to recommend, by the way. You can use either one, but utility pouch, much easier to play with. It slows down the weapons inside of it, but those weapons deal more damage. So the net result is you save stamina because the weapon is slower. And also attack speed buffs are more effective with this bag because all the attack speed stuff is additive in this game. So when you have 30% slower and then you add a bunch of attack speed to that, let's say 130% attack speed, then the weapon's swinging twice as fast and it's still dealing the 30% damage on top of it. So just the way that additive effects work makes attack speed much better with this bag. So the build I'm going to recommend here is double axe, and essentially all you need for this, it's actually the simplest build guide in this entire video. You just need 2 axes. It's really that easy. Try to find an axe. Again, reroll around rounds 4 through 7 to make sure you're finding a couple of axes. And then once you get the 2 axes, you combine them and make the double axe. Along the way, you can find leather armor to turn to dragon scale armor, as well as gloves. You want as many gloves as you can get your hands on, no pun intended. Maybe a little pun intended. You could use 7, 8 gloves. There's no limit to the amount of gloves you want in this build, trust me. So, turn all your gloves into dragon claws, turn all your armor into dragon scale armor. To a lesser extent, the dragon skin boots are not bad, but not a huge priority. And then also gem box. If you see a gem box, make sure you grab that. This build is going to need a lot of gems. It'll have a lot of slots for the gems. So, also, you're probably going to want a second weapon, so just pick up a broom or anything on sale. Spear, hungry blade, doesn't really matter. Anything you find is fine, as long as you're on your way to the 2 axes. And then the end game build will look something like this. I lifted this again from another player who posted it to the site, but it is a very simple build. I can't really add too much commentary to it, other than the fact that this player has way too many high tier gems. You won't get that in a real game, but the idea is there. You're going to want to put some topazes and maybe rubies in your axe to make it faster. Put a ton of gloves and fanny packs around your axe to make it really fast, and also key item oil lamp. This will improve the accuracy of the axe to make sure you don't miss. That's important. There's some other stuff that, you know, may not be super necessary, but it's kind of good to have, like the crook, king crown with some mana. That's fine. And then you will eventually run into stamina issues, so you'll either need the heroic potions for stamina, or some bananas can also just work. Some bananas on the gloves also work. But it's a pretty simple build. The subclass is blacksmith with the anvil. Very simple build. Not too much to say about it. That is what you ideally go for, and it's very easy, very easy. Okay, as far as some pivots, there's only 2 pivots that I'm going to recommend here for the double axe build. First one is if you do have a broom and you happen to find an early mana orb, you can go into Deerwood Guardian. Deerwood Guardian, very strong mana production. It can support a staff by itself, and then you can turn the staff into a spiked staff, the Berserker's specialty, which is a really powerful weapon. Makes a lot of spikes, makes a lot of empower. Alongside the spike staff, you can run either Thornbloom. This is probably the best weapon to have alongside it. Or you can run the rapier with some blueberries. Can we find blueberries? Yes. You can run the rapier with a bunch of blueberries, because blueberries make luck for the rapier, and you're going to have tons of mana, so that you will always be above the blueberry threshold. So both of these are good second weapons for the spike staff. There's other things you can do with it, but that is those are the basics there. The second signpost is Slime Time. If you find this skill on round 4, I do recommend that you maybe go for the wolf emblem, the dog subclass is the subclass that gets all the dogs. The reason is because with Slime Time, you're going to get a bunch of these gooblings, right? And the emblem wants you to stack up a bunch of pets around it. Goobling is a pet, so you stack up a bunch of the gooblings, and ideally get a busted blade. This is the hardest hitting weapon that you can get, and you can get it to 100% crit via the wolf emblem. And yeah, it's pretty easy. Along the way, you'll get some dogs too. Of course, it's a dog. It's a dog subclass. We get the dogs. We love the dogs. Another alternate win con for this would be if you find cheese and get Cheese Goobert. Cheese Goobert is capable of supporting most any type of weapon. The Busted Blade is still ideal, but if you get Cheese Goobert, you can still run pretty much any weapon alongside Cheese Goobert, and that can win for you. So those are pretty much the only two pivots I recommend for Berserker. It is, in some ways, one of the easier classes to play if you follow the by-the-book plan. So yeah, that'll do it for Berserker. Alright, and finally Pyromancer. So Pyromancer is a pretty versatile class. I would say she fits a little more on the control side like Reaper, but she's not really pigeonholed into any one thing. She is, again, other than Reaper, probably the class that has the most diverse builds. All of her builds kind of do something a little different, and a lot of them are very niche and require very specific items to get going. So I don't think she's very beginner friendly, but the build I'm going to propose today is very beginner friendly, very easy to replicate if you like her. It's just a lot of the subtleties are going to take you a long time, a lot of experience to find with Pyromancer. But her whole thing is going fast, so she can make heat. She gets these flames very, very easily in the shop and also from her bags, which allow her to start the combat with a lot of extra heat, which makes her go really fast. So if you like the idea of putting these these mechanisms together that go burr and just inflict a ton of blind on the enemy, or just attack rapidly, you know, a really fast kind of playstyle, then she might be for you. The bag I'm going to recommend is actually the Fire Pit. As of recording, this is not considered a very good bag. However, it is a very easy bag to use. All it does is give you extra max health for fire items that you put inside of it. The probably stronger option is the Offering Bowl. However, this one is by far the most difficult bag to play in the game. I do not recommend it for beginners. Trying to describe how to use this bag would be its own guide, but I will give a TLDR that if you do want to use this bag, I would recommend throwing generally 7 cost worth of items into it, because when you throw items into the Offering Bowl, it will give you back items that cost that much minus 1, but in exchange for the 1, it'll give you a flame. So basically, when you put 7 into it, you'll get 6 worth of items back and a flame. Why is that good? Well, there's a lot of key 6 cost items, including amulets. This class is also very reliant on amulets for a lot of the builds. As well as Mana Orb, which supports a lot of the mana builds. Pretty much supports all of the mana builds. You're going to need Mana Orbs. So if you find those kind of key items, potions too, if you find any of those key items for the Offering Bowl, it can really direct your build. So I recommend that as the primary number. But other than that, even numbers are very good because it gives you more sell value. That's, just trust me, that's complicated, but generally even numbers or the number 7 are going to be best for the Offering Bowl. But for the build today, I'm going to recommend the Fire Pit. You don't have to do any complicated math to use this thing. Just use the Fire Pit and don't worry about it. We're going to prioritize the Burning Blade. This requires the Hero Longsword plus 2 flames. You can also get there with the regular Hero Sword and 2 flames, and then get 2 Whetstones to make the Longsword. Either way, it builds into the same Burning Blade. And this is the core item for all of your branches is Pyromancer for the most part. Get yourself a bag of stones if you can, similar to the Ranger. Putting stones onto a Burning Blade or Longsword is very strong for early damage, and you can keep it for, honestly, most of the game. Prioritize any items that give heat, like Oil Lamp is very good, Chili, very good, and the Ruby Egg also gives heat. And we're going to go dragons, so that's why the egg is also important. Here is an example build for the dragon board. Again, I lifted this from the website, but it's a pretty simple board to replicate. You're going to go the Scale Warden subclass, Dragon Nest. The Dragon Nest gives you the dragons, so you actually don't need a lot of preparation for this. As long as you have the Burning Blade, the Dragon Nest will supply the dragons, okay? And as far as the dragons you put around the Burning Blade, it can be really anything. The setup is going to look similar to this, where you have 2 dragons sharing the Dragon Nest and the blade, and then the rest of them are just around the blade in various places. It is important to note you want to prioritize putting the dragons on the blade rather than the nest, even though the nest likes dragons around it, but the blade does more for the dragons than the nest does. So just try to surround your Burning Blade with a bunch of dragons. That's pretty much it, if you want the TLDR. But the Obsidian Dragon, this hatches from the Red Dragon, plus a Dragon Orb, Draconic Orb. This is generally going to be your best dragon, but it is not necessary. Even if you don't find the red dragons, it is okay. Just any dragons will do. But yeah, this is a pretty good example endgame board where the 2 Obsidian Dragons look at each other. Another key item for this is Sun Armor. Always recommend getting yourself a Sun Armor. It's a very good defensive item that pretty much only Pyro gets access to. And yeah, some of the other stuff here, like Cap of Discomfort, is generally good. Draconic Orb is generally good. Also, Maneki Neko, the cat, highly recommended because it speeds up all your dragons. This is 15% speed to all of your dragons, as well as the Burning Blade. Oh no, it doesn't speed up Burning Blade, sorry. But it does speed up all the dragons. So all of those are godly items that will get sped. Sun Armor, also godly. So yeah, the cats are very good in this build. Generally not a high priority item for other builds, but for this build they are very, very good. And as far as pivots, we have a few pivots, a few signposts for Pyromancer. So again, she is generally very amulet hungry. A lot of her builds are directed by amulets, so if you do see amulets, I would prioritize rolling the amulets a little higher on her than the other classes. One of those is Amulet of Darkness. If you find a lot of dark items early, the Corrupted Crystal, which can turn into Cap of Discomfort. Find a lot of dark stuff, or if you find False Life, then the Dark Lantern could be something you would choose. Another good item for Dark Lantern is the Phoenix. This gives you an extra revive on top of the Lantern's revive. And yeah, pretty much put some dark items. You can keep your Burning Blade, but just put some dark items around the Lantern instead of the dragons, and that could be your build. Another build, very, very strong build, one of the strongest builds actually, is Excalibur on this class, but requires some specific setup. So Excalibur comes from the Heroic Potion. If you find an early Heroic Potion, you might want to go for it. If you have Amulet of Feasting, that is the #1 signpost for Excalibur. The Amulet of Feasting makes it much, much better, much more reliable. Or if you find an early Wolf Badge, could also be a reason you'd want to go for it. So yeah, if you start with like Pan Wolf Badge, maybe you'll try to go Excalibur. Excalibur builds are pretty complicated to explain all the intricacies. I'm just going to pull up another board here of what it might look like at the end. But the key thing is chili cheese. Just like real life, chili cheese is the goat. And you're going to want to surround the pan with a bunch of chili and cheese. Blueberries if needed. Mana orbs, of course, always. And then, you know, they got the feastings here. The subclass could be Dark Lantern, but it could actually be the banner as well. The subclass is not too important for Excalibur because it's so powerful. It can actually support pretty much any subclass you put on it. But yeah, this is the core of the build for that. Third pivot option that I would give, if you find early Amulet of Steel or if you find an early Snowman, you can go Cryomancer if the site won't show it. To get the Frozen Flame, this allows you to inflict cold whenever you get heat. It's I would say the key item for it is actually the Ice Armor, and Ice Armor comes from the Snowman plus Leather Armor. You want multiple of these, and you will still use the Burning Blade. So Burning Blade, good in a lot of these builds. You can still use the Burning Blade as your primary weapon with the Frozen Flame. But you're just going to get a couple Ice Armors, and you're going to get as many Amulets of Steel as you can get your hands on. This will give you starting in power with the ice armor, and also additional in power as the ice armor keeps giving you more and more block. So that's really good damage scaling. Definitely one of the strongest pyro builds if you can get it. And then the last pivot that I will give is for a banner build, Crusader Burning Banner. If you find an early Thorn Whip, you might be tempted to turn it into a Flame Whip. And I forgot to put the supporting items here, but I will look up really quickly. It's easy. You might be tempted to make a Flame Whip. Flame Whip really likes having, this is another signpost, the Gloves of Power, which come from Gloves of Haste plus Stone Skin Potion, because Flame Whip is going to use your spikes to go really, really fast. This is the fastest you can go on Pyro. On a class that already goes really fast, this weapon goes crazy fast. The only thing is it doesn't scale, so you're going to want something like Gloves of Power, which give you a ton of block while this goes really fast. Something like Molten Dagger, which scales its damage over time. You could also use the Burning Blade in place of this, but that's going to cost a lot of stamina. So if you do that, it can work, but you're going to need a ton of bananas, a ton of Wolpertingers to solve your stamina, things like that. So usually the Molten Dagger is the recommended option. And then you can go Burning Banner as your subclass, because Sun Armor turns fire items into holy items, and the Burning Banner activates off holy items. So because the Flame Whip is going so fast, this will just inflict tons of blind. It'll just keep your opponent perma-blinded, hopefully. You can go other subclasses with this too, but I kind of like the banner. And then, of course, for Flame Whip, you need some kind of spikes. So Pineapple and Lamp being the two main options, for pretty much the only two options for spikes that give you spikes over and over and over. Lamp being the best. So you could put these in the signpost too if you find an early Pineapple, early Lamp, and a Thorn Whip. Then maybe you want to go for the Flame Whip build. And that is it for Pyromancer, and that's it for all the classes, in fact. So let's get to the advanced tips now. Advanced tip number 1, hidden shot mechanics. After rolling 3 times, the cost of rerolling goes up. This is not really a hidden or unknown mechanic, but since it's important to what we're about to talk about, I did want to mention it here. For the real hidden shot mechanics, when you buy an item, you can't see it again on the next roll. And when you pass an item, you can't see it again in 3 rolls. Before round 4, it's actually 2 rolls. There's a smaller pool. But for most of the run, it's 3 rolls that you won't be able to see an item after passing it. Then every round, this mechanic resets. So that means if you buy an item, you re-roll, you will not be able to see that item again. But if you buy an item and you start the next round, you could see it again in the next shop. This is important because if you're hard rolling for multiple copies of an item, like daggers or mana orbs, you are incentivized to stop rolling and start the next round as soon as you find one, because otherwise you're just wasting at least one of your rolls to search for it again. If you only have 1 gold left, you literally can't find another copy in a roll, so you should just start the next round at that point. Items have a soft cap, which makes it much harder to obtain more of them beyond a certain number. This is extremely well hidden information, and data mines are banned on the Discord server, so I wasn't able to find an accurate table of all the soft caps in the game, but it's something that is known and discussed among top players, many of whom do seem to know the exact soft caps for certain items. The soft cap for most items is thought to be 3 or 4, where after that point you will rarely find more. For example, Mana Orb, if you've already made a Magic Staff plus Moon Armor plus Moon Shield, you probably shouldn't expect to see many more orbs. This can matter a lot for skills like Mana Mastery, where you need to find a lot of additional orbs to make it worth it. And then, finally, bags will always appear every 10th item. That's 2 rerolls normally, but if you need to lock a big item to find space for it, it could take up to 3. Also, the bag is not guaranteed to be the one you want. If you need efficient space, you might want to roll without customer cards, since those increase the chances of finding expensive, small bags. Which is a good segue into advanced tip number 2, space management. Most of the time, buying space isn't very complicated. You would ideally have just enough space to fit your stuff at all times. Any less, and you lose efficiency by not being able to fit your items. anymore, and you lose efficiency by having empty bags. So buy it if you need it, right? But the efficiency curve changes throughout the course of the game. In the early game, wasted gold on empty bags is devastating because many rounds will be decided by 3 or 4 gold. You can't afford the tempo. In the late game, though, you might not care about that 3 or 4 gold, but a lack of space means you're not running your high-value items or cutting corners on your adjacency bonuses, which can hamstring your build. Therefore, try to build very small in the early game, very compact, never buy space unless absolutely necessary. But as you transition to mid and late game, do try to pick up extra good space that you see because it will save you efficiency in the long run. As far as what qualifies as good space, well, 2x2 bags are always good. It's the most efficient space you can get. Next is Potion Belt, a little more inefficient, but still close enough to the 2x2 to be worth it. Fanny Pack loses a little more efficiency, but as long as you have items to speed up, it's very much worth it, and it's probably the best bag in general. Protective Purse, aka the Gucci bag, is the most inefficient, but I would still pick them up unless I'm hard rolling, because the block is good, and sometimes you just need that one space to fill a gap. Stamina Sack is niche and inefficient. I wouldn't buy it unless you're desperate for space or you know the build will require extra stamina. Advanced tip number 3, amulets. So I touched upon it a little bit in the Pyromancer section, but amulets are an item you get when you buy the unidentified amulet, and then it will split into one of these 7 amulets after you buy it, right? It costs 6 gold, you're going to get a random amulet. Might be great for your build, might be an absolute brick, not saying any one in particular, but it's just a gamble. So whether you buy these or not, it's going to depend a lot on your class, what build you're planning to go for, what builds you would go for if you found the right amulet, you know. If it's early enough, it could be worth picking up an amulet, but keep in mind that a 6 gold investment early game is pretty massive, and if you get something like this, this really does nothing in the early game until your build is ready to support it, or maybe the Amulet of Alchemy if you have no potions, right? Some of these can be real misses. Now, in the worst case, you're only paying 3 gold because you can buy and sell it, right? So 3 gold is what you're risking, and really you can do some math if you are so inclined to make kind of a risk-reward decision on it. If your best amulet, let's say you would pay 10 gold. Let's say you pay all your gold for the best in-slot amulet. You really want, like, the Amulet of Steel. But maybe there's 2 other amulets that you would accept, but you'd only maybe pay 6 for it. You're not, like, excited if you get these, but you're not unhappy either. They are worth 6 gold. And then the rest of them are just misses, let's say. The other 4 are just misses. So you can do the math based on 10 for your best amulet, plus 6 plus 6 for your other acceptable amulets, plus 3 for each of your other amulets, and then divide that by 7. In this case, that'd be about 5 gold. So according to the risk-reward analysis, it's not worth it to buy an amulet in this case. That being said, it's a little more complicated than that, because sometimes your best amulet's worth more than 10 gold. Sometimes your best amulet can be worth 20 gold. Sometimes it defines the build. Like in the case of Amulet of Steel, this one is probably the most broken one, I would say, because if you get multiple of these somehow, if you're really lucky and you can roll multiple Amulets of Steel, you're not only getting, like, let's say 3 amulets, you're not only getting 3 times the empower, but also they fuel each other. So you're getting them fueling each other for extra empower, and you can just build your entire board around it to the point where it's extremely broken. Another one's Amulet of Feasting. This one's great for Excalibur, which I mentioned earlier. Doesn't necessarily get better in multiples, but, having a couple is good. You can put a bunch of food on the board, and it's all very strong. Amulet of the Wild is very general. This is almost always fine just for the extra spikes. Also, the same thing can be said for Amulet of Life. Darkness is very good in the early game, because this does a bunch of damage, flat damage, which, flat damage tends to fall off later in the game when you have other better sources of damage, but early on, this will be an extremely hard carry. The only 2 misses, like real misses for most builds, are going to be either the energy or the alchemy. So if you're in a spot where you can use one of those, energy is traditionally for mana-based builds to refund mana when you spend it. It can be used for a few other things too, heat as well. When you spend heat, when you spend luck, for a rapier. And then alchemy, obviously, is just when you have potions. If you are in a position to use one of these two, then you probably don't have too many misses, and you might just want to go for it. I would say, yeah, early amulets are better than later amulets, because again, the darkness is better early. And they are build-arounds to the point where you find a good one, now you're buying every single amulet. You're rolling every amulet, hoping to get multiples. In addition to that, when you get them early, you can eventually find Recombobulator, a way to turn them into other items, which can offset the cost. And that is a good segue into our next tip. Advanced tip number 4, Recombobulators. Don't be afraid to use the unstable Recombobulator. Chances are your board has a few less than stellar items that would benefit from a reroll. The Recombobulator itself is a fairly strong item, so you're not giving up much tempo by buying it. If your run is going badly, it might be worth a Hail Mary to just throw everything in there, since higher value items can appear, and those items are much more likely to change the course of your run. I think the only times you shouldn't buy Recombobulator are when you're looking for specific pieces to your build, like if you need a whip to make a Bloodthorn or an orb to make a staff. And you really need to keep rerolling, or if your build is good already and you just need to find luxury items to flesh it out. Also, stable Recombobulator exists, and it's probably the best item in the entire game. It gives you items worth more than what you put into it, so always at least feed it a stone or something for the extra money. Advanced tip number 5, believe in yourself. No, that's not a backpack specific tip, but do it anyway. You deserve it for making it through this entire video. Although the game can be daunting and extremely complex, it's also pretty easy to jump into and just make fun stuff happen. My hope is that even if you can't memorize all these ideas, they'll pop up in your mind during some of your runs, and eventually they'll just become second nature. Again, apologies for this video being so long. I cut it down a lot from where it was originally. If you made it here, I'd appreciate a like on the video. Follow me here or on Twitch for more Backpack Battles content, and leave a comment if you have any opinions on what I could do better in future videos. Remember, I'm a streamer, not a YouTuber. Thanks so much, and see you next time.